the first thing that occurs to me is how that shaped you, being a coach's son and moving a lot, and how we're going to get into what you do today and rodeo and those kind of things, but I think some of that happens because as you're bouncing around following dad to the coaching jobs, well, you got to make a new set of friends all the time.
Yeah.
What was that like? Is that even true?
Yeah, it is true. And for me, it was easy, kind of the way I'm wired. I'm a people person. I like people. So my brother was just the complete opposite of that, though. He was more of an invert and made it more difficult for him as we moved into different places. To my dad, it was normal, though, because his father was a Methodist minister.
Yeah.
And I think he went to like 12 different schools from K through 12 because of just they bounced so much. So that was normal to us as well. We didn't really know much different. But it did. You look back and you have appreciation because I've got friends all over the state of Texas, and some of it is because even childhood friends that I had in places that we lived at and whatnot. Him making the commitment to break the cycle. Looking back at it, I have so much respect for it, though, because it was like, okay, my boys are going to be finally, have some normalcy, and we're going to go through school. And not a better place in the world than Gustine, Texas, for us to do that when I was a kid growing up. My agriculture background, I laugh and tell people all the time, is every industry in ag I've been involved in because I grew up in Gustine, Texas, and the people that I work for. And I mean, you can't find probably any form of agriculture that I wasn't involved in, either working for someone with it or, and been around it.
Yeah.
And that was a great foundation for everything I've done the rest of my life as well.
Yeah.
We laugh about it. It's, everything from, of course, I worked for Cullen Stevens Jr., and Cullen was in there, everything. You talk about diversification. Now, he was there. We had row crop with peanuts. We had mama cows. We had yearlings. He was partnered with Sid Miller and had the greenhouse.
Yeah.
I had vegetables, raised hay. That's what, of course, then I milked. And then also we had, an elderly man, Johnny Robinson, which a lot of folks in Comanche County remember eating his honey.
Yeah.
And he went to our church, and I hated it. My mom would force me to go with him and help him with his bees. So, all of that, looking back, I have such great appreciation for it now. At the time, not so much, but, at the time, it really made, gave me opportunity. I can talk with anybody in agriculture about something, so, and make it relatable. So
it's kind of crazy how you get handed these gifts. You got no clue they're a gift.
No.
Half the time you're trying to avoid it, I mean, it's valuable. Anybody listening should think about that. Like, you don't know how big of a gift this thing you're just so dreading actually is. Yeah. And time marches on, and time, nobody can see around that corner of time.
No.
I mean, I would have never thought I'd be sitting in a little podcast studio having a conversation with Scott Hodges, but I am. And it's really awesome. So I hope people think about that a little bit. It's like, hey, man, I don't want to have to go put on this bee suit and gather honey and do these things. But turns out,
you never know. And
it's good.
I listen to a lot of Andy Stanley, and that's what he talks about, seasons. And I think that really, I can relate to that as far as there's different seasons in our lives. Mm-hmm. And you think back, and those seasons, especially as a youth, that's the foundation, the bedrock that we're gonna come back to. And it's, it opens up so many doors as well.
And you said a thing. There's not a better place in the world to grow up than Gustine, Texas. And I agree with that. I lived a similar thing. There's somebody listening that just cannot believe that. Yeah. You mean there's only 200 people in the whole town? Like, we got 200 people on our block. Well, I mean, because we're different humans. They're living a different piece of this adventure than we did. And I think that's okay. I think that's partly what makes some of it so much fun and so interesting.
I know, when you go to school and stuff, they'd say where you're from or telling them, and we'd say, well, we had to drive 40 miles to the closest, movie theater to take a girl to the movies, and they're like, what?
Sure. How did you do that? Well, It was just how it was.
That's right.
So you can't. So now you've kind of quit bumping around. You mentioned a brother. Let's stay on the family for just a second. More than one. Like, tell me about your mom and dad. I mean, we've talked about dad a little bit. What about mom, and then what about siblings?
That's what, like I said, mom and dad both were teachers. Mom was an English teacher, played in piano church. I had one brother. That's what, he was 3 years older than I was. And and we couldn't have been more polar opposite than you name it. Most of my rodeo friends didn't even know I had a brother, just because David was never around.
Yeah, he didn't do rodeoing or any of those things.
He actually, the people in Comanche will remember him from KCOM. That's what, at least the older guys with gray hair will anyway, because that's where he started his radio career, was KCOM at 16 years old, and he continued in radio for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Bounced around. He ended up in Waco with those stations up there and all that. So he called lots and lots of ball games. That's what. So playoff games and all that. He was pretty highly sought after. A lot of folks wanted him to call their game on the radio and stuff. So, but that was kind of his niche. Behind the microphone, he was one person. Out in public, it was a little tougher for him. But behind the microphone, man, he was bigger than life.
Yeah. Is he still around?
No, he actually passed away about 2 years ago.
Okay.
So we lost David. Dad, actually, as well. That's what we lost Dad. He was 52. In 1992, pulled off the side of the road and had aneurysm.
Oh, man.
Never had any trouble at all. But I still, I always look at things, with retrospect, you can see things better. And, God allowed him to pull off the side of the road, take the pickup out of gear. And a guy that ropes calves, known me for a long time, was the first person to him.
Oh, yeah?
And he was a paramedic. And
how is that? Like,
it's just, how do you script that, right?
Yeah.
God does. But,
right.
And he told me, he said, and I guess it gave us peace too, because he told us, he said, he didn't suffer. And he said, Scott, he said, I was there within 2 minutes. He said, I saw him pull over and knew something was wrong. And he didn't know my dad.
Yeah.
And it didn't click with him who he was and all that until later in life. But he found me one day and he told me, he said, hey, he said, I was the first one there. And anyway, but so we lost Dad. So Mom moved back to Crawford, Texas, where she was born and raised. And she's still there today and retired. And that's what, just running Crawford. So,
yeah. Oh, man, there's a million things to talk in just that little thing you just mentioned, like death.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming. None of us know when it is.
That is.
You can't pick how.
No.
Although if you could, I'd want to be in the line of like aneurysm, like just die.
Yeah.
I don't want to suffer.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't get to pick that. And I don't want to have to watch any of my loved ones suffer or those kind of things. So like, I like bringing it up on the show just because I want.
It's real life.
I understand it so well. Thanks to growing up in a rural community, thanks to being in agriculture,
Yes.
I've seen dogs die, animals die, horses die, things, I'm calling them things, living beings I loved, So I've kind of lived through it a lot. Being a Christian is a good thing for me in that regard, because I'm like, hey, I mean, it's just a vessel. This little meat suit I'm in is not me. It's just this vessel I'm inhabiting. And I want to keep it healthy and active and all these things. But I was listening to something the other day, and I'm rambling a little bit, but we're really here to talk about Scott. But I feel like I want to say this. A guy was talking about, man, I was there with my father when he died, and this wave of reality hit me. That's not my dad. My dad's gone. Like, he's gone on to the next thing. That's his old meat suit, but that's not him. So that's one way to think about it, and it gives me some comfort to think about it that way.
But I think without that, you don't have the peace, and that's really what to me, that's what I hear, is that we can have peace in that, because we do have that understanding.
Yeah.
And of course, and just still that ties back for me to rodeo, is that my season in rodeo have allowed me to have the bedrock and the foundation to deal with the loss and the tragedies that I've had in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And all that started was my first college rodeo was in Port Townsend, New Mexico. And I'm in Angelo State. Rod Miller was a guy that we roped with, and he roped steers mostly, rope calves some. We all went out there together, and that's what I win fourth in the long round. And this is on Friday night. We roped Friday night slack, so we were there Saturday, and Sunday afternoon is for the short round. And Rod, he didn't do any good. I said, "Are you going back home?" He said, "No, I'm going to stay here with you." You know, he said, "I want to be here to see you roping in the short round." I said, "Okay." And he said, "And then we'll go to church in the morning." Well, now back in those days, I mean, I'm 1/4. We got, a little cash coming. We know. I mean, we're fixed to, have some fun now. I mean, we're fixed to light the town up. And I was like, "What? We're going to what?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I thought we'd go out." And he said, "Man," he said, "you don't want to do that." He said, "Well, let's go eat a good steak. Let's get good rest, and let's go to church in the morning." Well, okay, And you couldn't find a better person in the world than Rod Miller. Yeah. And so anyway, we go to church that Sunday, and I'll never forget, we're sitting in the bleachers there at Portales, and I'm looking around thinking, wow, I mean, there's a lot of folks that showed up, on Sunday, didn't have this in mind. But that was the first day that I really felt like that I heard the message through cowboy terms. Mm-hmm. Again, born and raised in the church, been there every time the doors opened, and nothing against that at all or any of that. But it really didn't click. And it did that morning in Portales because it was cowboys that were just telling their stories. I remember Jim Watkins, he used to coach at Odessa. Him just telling the story and just being very vulnerable and open. Yeah. And no barriers and just, hey, this is the way it is, And that morning there, that's what really helped me, I think, because I really committed to Jesus at that point. Now, did I live a straight life? Lord, no. A lot of curves and bumps in the road, but that was the foundation point for everything I've done. And to this day, that's where that peace comes from. Was that decision that morning.
Man, way to go, Rod Miller.
way to
get you to that. I mean, we all play that role in somebody's life, and we may not know it. I mean, you just are that voice of reason. And anybody that's rodeoed, there's some partying to be done. Like, it's not, and I don't know. I mean, I want to be careful here because my daughters may listen, whatever. I guess the truth is the truth. I liked the party. I mean, because it was, if you're a people person, that environment is just fun. Yeah. So, anyways, I don't know if I even hate that I did that because there's a lot of great kind of education there, friendships made, and some of these things. Although it was never, not one single time, a good decision. I was not making smart decisions in those moments. So anyways, it's my journey.
Well, with my boys, though, that's what they'll tell you. Our favorite saying at the house, or Dad's favorite saying at the house, is choices and consequences.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, it's always that way. It's some, you make a good choice, there's good consequences that come with it. And we make some bad choices, then those bad consequences come with those too.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not always this one-for-one trade either. I mean, sometimes you might make a bad choice and no consequence. And then you might make just a little bit of a bad choice and it's 10 times consequence. So, I mean, it's not a one-for-one thing, and it's not – I mean, that's really the thing you got to understand if you can. You got to get the maturity to understand this first chance you get. It's not a one-for-one trade. and like, it can exponentially get bad. Go drink a few beers, too many beers. There, that's the first bad choice. Uh-oh, now drive. Well, there's another bad choice. Uh-oh, now run over somebody and kill them. Yeah. Now, see how fast that can just exponentially go bad from just one first bad choice. Yep. And Rod, I think, was this story is just so great to me. You're fixing to make a bad choice.
That's right.
And he just said, no, let's don't do that. Let's go have a steak and go to church. And you were like either scared of him or God had a little piece of it somewhere. You said, okay, let's do that. And then and so think about that in your life. I need to think about that. Like I'm saying these words out loud, but I'm telling it to myself in my brain. Like, think about that, Neil. Like, don't one bad choice you might get away with, but try to avoid them.
Well, and I think, as we get older, we look at it with respect too of how can I be the Rod Miller?
Yeah.
There's people around us every day that don't have that opportunity, or maybe just are looking for it and don't know where to look. So there's like I said, that we could talk for hours and hours about, how that intertwines and works. But it's really, I really lay that to the foundation for everything that's, I've had to deal with. That's what, and everybody, don't take me wrong, this is not a pity deal. Oh, wow.
Well,
I've had a
yeah,
terrible
it's
life.
not.
I've had
It's
a wonderful
story.
life, but that is what's given me the peace to get through when the bumps in the roads and
that's the stuff I want to ask about. That's stuff I hope you can tell
Mm-hmm.
in like pretty just a raw way. Whatever those bumps are, I know you're kind of special, but you're not the only one that's been over those bumps. Same for me. So if you're listening and you think you're the only person that has been through this, you're just not. And so I'm thinking here in my own brain, do we want to cover something else before we start getting to the bumps? Or I am curious, how'd you did your dad rodeo? Did your mom rodeo?
No,
How did you ever get into rodeo?
Well, that's what my dad loved horses. So always had a good horse. And growing up, I always had something to ride. And he made a special effort to make sure we had a place with, where we keep a couple of horses. And that's when I was about, probably 5 and 6 years old, I was going to be a bull rider. I was pretty convinced that, that was who I was going to be. And Dad, I look back on it, was so wise. Because he said, okay, never discouraged me at all. He just encouraged, if that's what you want to do, that's what we're going to do. And he took me around everywhere he could take me and bucked me off of anything he could put me on. And after a while, it was like, man, I don't know about this. So I'm not sure if he and my uncle were in cahoots or not. But when I was about 7, and I'm getting pile driven everywhere we go. I'm not a very good bull rider. And so my uncle shows up with a rope one day. And Glenn had always, he's my uncle, a lot of people know him, Glenn Hodges. He was always my hero because he was kind of the black sheep, supposedly the family a little bit, but always a cowboy.
Yeah.
And anything cowboy, that's what I attracted to. And so he brought this rope by one day and he said, here, try this out, And so like I said, I look back, probably Dad and him had they probably had this planned out, but so I went to roping, and anything that would put me on a horse and where I could, be a cowboy, that's what I wanted to be. So that's kind of where it all started, was just that. And I look back and I see kids where it's all given to them, and even my own, it doesn't have that craving probably. If you're on the other side of the fence and can't get over, you really want that blade of grass. Right. And that's what I was with rodeo. I just wanted it so bad.
Yeah.
So he helped me, my uncle helped me buy a cow. Our dad co-signed the note. So I bought a bred cow. She calved, we sold it, and then I bought my first calf horse. Now, he was 26 years old. His hair was about 3 inches long, starved to death, and they called him Charlie Thunder.
Anybody that's lived in every rodeo, every's a big word, but there's a lot of rodeo athletes that know exactly what you're talking about, and it's got to make them smile because it's making me smile.
So that's what lit the fire, and from that point on, it was just anything I could do to where I could rope. And like I said, I was so blessed to have people around me because Mama didn't. We never went hungry, but both school teachers don't have a lot of extra income for horses, calves, anything like that. But living in Gustine, Texas, you've got a village that raises the kids at that time. And Cullen Stevens Jr. and different ones, they made sure I had calves. I used the arena at Gustine. That was my personal practice pen.
Yeah.
I had a fence down the middle of it because it's so wide, to rope calves in and things. And people plowed it for me. Let me turn the lights on. All this that they did just to help me.
Oh, yeah.
I
lived a similar thing. I told this story on one other podcast. I can't remember, but it fits this piece of our conversation. Yeah. Dudley Brothers, we had horses. So, there was a certain access to the Western lifestyle and cowboys I had from forever, really. Yeah. My uncle roped a bunch, but by the time I'd got to where I was he wasn't roping. There's really nobody roping. But they had horses. So I never was short of horses. And I lived close enough to town, I could saddle up a couple of horses and lead them down to the arena and pretend. There weren't any calves out there, but I was dreaming them in my head. So I'm backing this horse in the box and just chasing this imaginary calf out across the arena. And that's how I got, that's exactly how that whole rodeo career I had started. just not even chasing a real calf, but I still had so much help to have a horse, to have a saddle, to have this arena that I happened to be able close enough to ride to. One time I was chasing that imaginary calf. My mare stumbled, flipped over. I mean, it's just a ball of dust. And I stood up looking around like, did anybody see that? Yeah. Luckily, nobody did, because that would have been the last time I got to go chase the imaginary calves if that Mom and Dad had found out.
Well, and when I was about 4th grade, Dad, he was sick for a little while and had spent some time in the hospital, and that's what I had this old horse. And I couldn't put the saddle on him by myself, but I did figure out I got a folding chair, and you put beside him, and he'd just stand there. And I'd get in that folding chair, and I could put the saddle on him. Yeah. Well, everybody, all my other friends, they didn't have horses; they rode bicycles. Well, I just rode my horse, and they rode the bicycles. Yeah. So I mean, that was great horsemanship skill learning. Is chasing all through the alleys of town in the little town there, and trying to rope them on the bicycles.
Yeah, I mean the stuff. I mean, there was not lots of great decisions made there, but it was still some good. I kind of almost want my kids to have those experiences, even though there's potential for danger, potential for injury, potential for pain. Anything that's kind of just bad enough to teach them something is good. Like you really shouldn't try to keep your child from every little bump, bruise, pain, embarrassment.
Because life's going to deal it.
Oh, yeah.
So they need to be under some terms where
like if you believe you're going to die, someday you won't be there for them. But they need to start getting those skills put in their belt right now.
That's it.
And you telling them doesn't do it. Mm-hmm. Like it's got to be some living it. Yep. That's my opinion anyway.
I agree. 100%. It's hard to do, though.
Well, yeah, you bet. I mean,
we'd like to bubble wrap them if we could sometimes.
That's right. You see your close members of your community, close friends that lose a child or something like that. I mean, you don't want to go through that. Oh, I was wanted to say for all my cousins, my uncles, everybody at Dudley Brothers who didn't know that I rode the Dudley Brother horse down in the arena and she flipped over and we got lucky, but that could have been one of those situations. Like, what if she had broke a leg? Like, she was a horse the ranch depended on to gather cattle to generate income, and I'm out there chasing imaginary calves in the arena and potentially injuring this valuable asset. So I owe my uncles, my cousins, everybody a big debt of gratitude, because although they didn't see it, they knew. They took a risk allowing me to do those things. Yeah. And I'm so glad they did, because I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be the man I am without it. And I think we all got to take those risks with our own children, with even just people, any person on your team at work, at your church, in your Sunday school. Like, you got to let some people have a little bit of rein to go learn some stuff.
That's it.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So, I don't know. Tell me some of the stuff you've learned from hard stuff. Doing hard things or living through hard things.
Yeah, and like I said, of course, I think it goes back to what we were talking about as far as the intertwine in the faith and the peace and all that. And I always say when I tell my story, it's not a sad story in that, it's not woe is me, because there's a lot of folks deal with a lot worse. But of course, I did lose my first wife in a car accident. That's what, in 1991. And that's what I still say that day in Portales, New Mexico, prepared me to be able to live through that. And it was to a point of grief right after it happened and everything else. I was going to handle everything else, everything, arrangements, all that. We're in Cuero, Texas. Told Mom, Dad, don't worry about it. I'll be back, and all that. Thank goodness they didn't listen to me, but they came and got me. But I'll never forget, I was on the floor in the hotel room. Couldn't talk, couldn't walk. I was done.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget. That's where I would say, God, I can't do this. And at that point, you could have flipped a switch, and grief's still there, but I could function. And there was a peace that, until someone's gone through it, they won't understand that word. Mm-hmm. But that's what it was. And that allowed me then, when we lose Dad about a year later, And then of course lost my brother not too long ago. So those are, those are grief, those are losses. To me, I'm so blessed and fortunate because, I had a wonderful relationship with Allison and best friend. And you know what? I've remarried since then. I have a wonderful relationship and best friend with Jennifer, and we have a family together. And not too many people have that understanding of that, how that is a blessing. It truly is. And that's where the peace comes, from that. So
now, were y'all both in the wreck?
No, that's what she had went to deliver a horse in San Antonio and was coming back.
Yeah.
And that's what, and it's back before I had a bag phone, but it was back before cell phones. And so, but anyway, I found the wreck, and then they said they took her to Carn City, and they had a highway patrolman or had a barricade in Carn City. When I rolled in, they stopped me and took me in from that point.
Wow.
But again, those are things that have made my life different.
If you don't mind, indulge me. So how long had y'all been married?
I've only been married about a couple of years, but we had dated for 8 years prior to that, all through high school.
Kids yet?
No kids or anything like that.
Okay.
And that's that's where, again, that's like my business that I'm in today. That's why, and this is how it all ties in.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that.
It was her fault by deemed of the accident, and so there was a truck involved, and we had cheap insurance. Quite frankly, didn't know what it was. We just knew we could afford it. That's what we had. You
didn't even look at the document. You just signed.
Not at all.
Get me some insurance.
And then I get these letters from attorneys, that are suing because the insurance company wrote a check so fast to make your head swim, and they were done. They were gone. And, they're still looking out for me for millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And I was like, I ain't got millions of dollars. And I said, well, if you ever get them, we're going to get them from you,
Yeah.
And that was that process. And then Dad on the other side it literally helped set everything up to where Mom, her transition and all, she bought a house she wanted next to her parents, and it was so different. And the guy in the middle made the difference in all of that.
Yeah.
And that really tied into what I do today. And that's why I never, ever was going to be in the insurance business.
Yeah, sure. But that's how life sends you down the path. Like I'd have never thought I was going to sell bacon for, I didn't even know what a pig was. I mean, right. But turns out it's a beautiful career, and I've loved it, and I'm so happy to have it. I bet you'd say the same thing about being in the insurance business.
Yeah. Well, the funny part is, how you do in college, they get ready to graduate. Well, they have the interviews on campus, and I had some of those trying to figure out how to interview, and two of them were insurance companies, and they're offering me a job. And I said, I never, ever, ever will work in insurance. And I'm in it. I'm in every word of it when I said that, so I had to butter that crow and eat it too. But that was the difference, though, for me, was because going through all that, now they're not wanting me to peddle anything. I can just help people.
Yeah.
Because I've never sold
how you
anything.
frame. Anybody and everybody, in my opinion, can sell something if they think about it right, and if they believe in it.
That's
and
it.
if I can sell bacon because I know it's good.
It's good.
and we're doing it in a fair and ethical way. Like I totally believe in the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I'm not selling you bacon, Scott. I'm actually giving you an opportunity to have something that's great and it's going to be good for you. And so you start framing it like that. You're not really selling insurance. You're taking the opportunity to help me in a place that you've been.
Yeah.
And you know how really tough it could be, even if I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I think that's probably one of the tougher parts of being in the insurance business is,
well, it is.
It's paying for a thing you don't fully understand the benefit of. And if you're lucky, you'll never fully understand the benefit of it.
That's right.
So.
Well, and our core value for us, and they hear me preach it every day but it is, it's my purpose. I think God put me in the insurance business and kind of as a purpose. And I think everybody has a purpose in life.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, I say, we're going to define selling as education with options. Is that we're going to explain, hey, this is how insurance works. Here's what your needs are, and here's the options to take care of the needs. And if they want to do that, that's fine. And one of the options is not to buy from us. They can take that information and go somewhere else. That's okay. Yeah. And sometimes it's better off for them to stay where they're at, but they need to understand it. And if we do it that way, don't sell anything. But like I said, you get to help people in ways that, wow.
Yep.
I'll never forget the first death claim that I delivered. That's tough.
Mm-hmm.
6 months prior, I'd sat at their kitchen table and we'd done the paperwork, and for this to happen, this guy gets killed in a car accident. I circled that house probably, 14 times before I could stop, and the family's there and all that. And I go in and check on, and the look on that lady's face, though, was relief, because she just knew financially that, okay, that part
you solved one piece of the puzzle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like I said, that's where I was placed for a reason.
Yeah.
And it was with everything I'd gone through. That's that I feel like we're giving back from that, and just like what we learned on the ranch and things like that. If we don't share that, then what good was it for us to learn it?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. I think it's like you never really enjoy your life until you figure out a way to give to others.
Mm-hmm. Promise.
I mean, and I'm not great at that. I mean, I spend a lot of time doing stuff for myself, or my family. But Comanche's right now in the middle of this community rehab thing we do, where a bunch of churches get together and we paint, roof, just fix up as many houses as we can get to. I'm not doing it. I'm sitting at a podcast studio talking, but my kids are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been to the worship services and to see a big community of churches or people or humans
mm-hmm.
just go give of their time, which is the most valuable thing any of us have.
For sure.
That's the trick. Figure out how to do that. And man, there's so much life and reward in it. And you're doing it in a way every day in the business you do.
Well, and you think about it, what gives you satisfaction, is when you feel like that you've really assisted or helped someone, and there's no better feeling in the world.
Yeah. You do something for somebody else they couldn't have done for themselves.
Yeah.
And that, look for those opportunities and try to take a hold of them, because they're really valuable. They're special. They're rare. I don't even know. Rare might be the wrong word, but they might be kind of rare, because actually because people can do a lot for themselves, and finding a chance to do it when they couldn't. That's big.
Well, and it's like, of course, in the agriculture world that we live in, raised in, looking for ways, if any small business today is talking about efficiency and ROI, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for any of us in your business, in the bacon business, you're helping producers, I'm sure, try to figure out how can we fix that margin where there is a little something,
sure.
a profit part on this deal as well. And we play that. I visited with some producers just last week, and we were talking about it on the insurance side of that.
Yeah.
And I said, when life was somewhat normal, the margin's always been tough in agriculture. Well, we all know that. But used to, you could, do one set of books for the banker that, you could make it look good.
Yeah.
That's hard to do anymore.
Yeah, right.
So you really have to have the eye on the ball, And just like that, we didn't necessarily sell insurance that day, but it was such a great feeling to be able to give back to those guys just information of, here's some things to look at and consider.
Yeah.
Get your bang for your buck this way, and different things like that. And I think that's where all of us, like I said, if we'll slow down, there's opportunities in any community, wherever, to make a little bit of a difference. And it's so self-rewarding.
Yeah.
And just, again, value.
Yeah. Did you say you got 2 boys?
I have 3 boys. I've got a 33-year-old, a 27-year-old, and a 15-year-old.
All right. So let's talk about them a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, what's the trick to having success as a parent?
Oh, probably talking the wrong one there. That's tough.
Okay, so are your boys any different? Yeah.
All of them are so different.
Yeah.
A 33-year-old people person, he's a licensed agent. He lives in Weatherford, so he sells insurance for us as well. My middle one, he's outgoing, but in a different way. It's got to be his group. And he just got licensed. He's just come into the business with us as well. And then the 15-year-old, he comes along, of course, later in life. That was a little miracle. And that's what he is, I think what's great about it is what was so fast with other boys. We know to cherish the small things.
Yeah, you've slowed it down a lot.
A lot, because I was running so fast. And Jennifer.
That's so true. You're building a business.
That's it.
And you're raising kids in the middle of building a business, and building a business takes all you got.
Everything.
And raising a family takes all you got. So where do you find those two or three people that you need?
Yeah, well, and I think what I learned though is we can hit the brakes. But when you're driven, as a business owner is driven, you're driven, I'm driven, we don't see that, especially younger. Scott did not see that with my other boys. And I look back and I feel like, wow, man, there were some mistakes I made there because I was so driven, being at the office at 5 o'clock, not coming home till 11 o'clock, whatever. There's a bigger life than that. And so, like, my little one, of course, he's really, I guess, took my heart now because he's wanting to rope. I started roping about 1.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And, and I'm not able to rope now. And so it's funny how God's placed that, kind of there and allowed us to do that. But there's so many of the small things that we'll hit the brakes for. Jennifer and I will and say, okay, wait a minute, this is important. We're going to be here, do whatever with Kay, take a breath. This other can wait. And it does. Yeah. What we thought was priority is not really priority.
For every business owner that's living that, I was going to say grind, but that's not the right word. That reality of how much it takes to build a business. I just want you to hear, if you don't show up tomorrow, the business will not die. It's not going to just disappear overnight. So now it's such a fine thing I'm talking about here. I mean, because that doesn't free you from the truth that you still have to run the business. You still have to create the vision and make sure the team that you're working with understands that, believes in it the same way you do, or at least close. So probably never will exactly because it's your business. I mean, it's how can they do that? But find the time, find the willingness, find the ability to say, well, I'm actually not that important. I cannot show up, and it might even do better because I'm out of the way of, I've found that at least to be true for me.
And I think it's communication's the key, because we're in a people business and there's a lot of folks that, it's high priority for me to make sure that, we're there, they need something, we're there. And it's usually, some of those customers for sure, Scott's there. And what I found is though, when I would communicate with even those customers and say, look, Kate's got this over here. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to be over. They understand 100%.
Yeah.
But as long as if I hadn't told them and I just disappeared, now that would have had a problem.
Right.
But when I was just upfront and honest to say, hey, pard, I'm going to get to that, but it's going to be here because I've got this. They're like, no, you go do that with that little boy. You know, and so I think that's a key, and I think that's maturity a little bit too, is just being able to communicate and being just as open with people as you can be.
Yeah.
And I think the staff represents that too. You can't hide from your staff.
Sure.
You can say, "Oh yeah, I'm working," and then you'll be playing golf or whatever. And they know you're playing golf.
That's
just tell me you're playing golf.
Right. Yeah. That's right. I mean, and that's okay. I've been in conversations where people are like, we don't need you. Like, we got this. Now, when we do, I've got a certain skill set. Really, nobody else carries that skill set. I'm the one that carries it. And it's not needed all the time. But when it's needed, it needs to be on point, ready to go.
That's it.
And you don't get the skill set I've got without time. I didn't get it yesterday. I've built it over 20 years, 46 years in total, So, like, some of that is stuff I never realized. I never really let myself, and part of it was some of the cowboy humility that you're taught is like, no, you're not good at anything. Nobody likes a bragger, these kind of things. I don't want to be a bragger. I'm not conceited, but I am good at some stuff. I'm really good at some stuff. That's all okay, and the day I woke up and realized that, life got a little bit simpler. Like, oh, okay, cool, I get it. Like, nobody's going to be mad if I didn't write every little document that needed to be wrote. Somebody else is probably way better at that.
Exactly.
Where they really need me is where I'm the best. So anyways.
But it's hard. Business owners out there understand how hard it is, you know.
That's right.
You know, if you've ever read the E-Myth book, you know, it talks about how, you know, entrepreneurial myth of, you know, person would leave a job where they're a good technician and create their own business and just create a job for themselves, you know, and they end up working for an idiot themselves.
Yeah, right. Oh,
You
yeah.
see
People
that.
talk pretty often about how I quit my job so I could work for myself and went from an 8-hour job to a 24/7 job. You know? Yeah, that business owning is certainly not, it never stops. There's a way bigger responsibility. Now it's not just your job, it's the company, everybody involved.
That's right. And their family.
Yeah. And that's right. And their grandparents and whoever else like aging parents that they're taking care of.
Right.
All of that. Now, piece of that's on your shoulders. So your boys are in.
Mm-hmm.
Did you make them do something else first? Is this?
No, they
I
did.
mean,
They did.
you've
Each
been
one of them-
successful in what you've done.
Yeah.
Do they think, oh, cool, well, I'm just going to be successful like Dad. That's going to
No,
be easy.
The funny part about that is both of them, the older boys said they would never ever work in insurance,
Yeah.
you know, and now they are, you know, and I hope we may have to clip that out so they don't hear me say that out loud, but really it was. And they were like, no, we're not going to do that because that's what Dad does, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, I've had to let them, you know, find their way. You know, Jennifer, my wife, she accuses me all the time about probably not pushing the boys hard enough. But you got to understand my background. I was coach's kid. You know, everybody's mistake was mine.
Yeah.
You know, so I understood that. And Dad wasn't mean, you know, but that's just the way life was. And so I was very, I guess, passive with the boys growing up.
Yeah,
but
you're sensitive to that.
it is. And, you know, and I had an older gentleman, we were working with horses, and he talked about how you can make a horse do anything, but for a short period of time. But you got to fix it up and let them find it to make them do it forever.
Yeah.
And that was the best words I've ever had. I think parenting, there's so many parents out there that need to understand that and really adhere to that, because you see them out there just, chewing on their kids all the time and just all over them. And I'm like, just fix it up and let him find his path.
Yeah.
You know, if it's roping or rodeo or playing football or baseball or whatever it is, I think you fix it up
Computer
and let them find
programmer.
it. Exactly.
It could be anything.
Playing the fiddle.
Yeah,
you know,
that's right.
Whatever.
That's right.
But I think that's really what I've tried to do with the boys is take that horse training mentality to say, okay, we're going to fix this up. If they want this is great. It's an opportunity. If not, that's great too. I want to be successful in anything they want to do.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
That's a yeehaw statement you're making, though. That concept is valuable in everything. Any team you're building, your own mindset, the only way you think about things, think about, like, set it up so you can find it. Mm-hmm. Because you try to make me do something,
not happening.
It ain't. I mean,
even if it's good for you.
Yeah, that's right. It might happen, but you're right. I'm not going to be consistent about it. I'm not going to be a willing participant. Where if you set it up and let me find it, then now I'm adding to this opportunity with my energy, with my enjoyment of it. So
because it's your idea.
That's right. Never was, but I think it was.
That's right.
That's so true. So valuable in business. I'm glad you mentioned it. I'm glad that's how your boys are getting to experience it. I hope they listen to this. I mean, I think that's part of the reason this is super valuable. Yeah. What if you die in the next 10 minutes or something? And now they're going to have this conversation to hear and listen to. I mean, it's just kind of, it's partly why I do it. I don't, hundreds of episodes maybe still left to go, but every one of them has that truth in it. Mm-hmm. That this is a recorded little bit of time of Scott sharing his thoughts about stuff. Like, how did you get to, you said something about how you preached to your team about thinking about sales. Mm-hmm. Can you say that again?
We want to define selling.
Yes, define selling.
We're going to define it as education with options. So there's no
did somebody teach you that? Did you learn it over time?
I think it was over time. And then, it's so funny in our industry, as any industry is, there's nothing original. Right. And I always talk about, as far as original business ideas, there's really probably not necessarily. There's tweaks of an original business idea that made somebody's own. But again, we copycat or adopt a lot of different ones. So not sure really it was just that I was so sensitive I didn't want to be the peddler. I didn't want to be the Kirby vacuum cleaner salesman. I always tell, we might have time for this, but I always tell the story about that. I'm in the insurance business. I get home Friday afternoon late. And I was just started. And I mean, we're still trying to rub 2 nickels to make a dime.
I mean, so
Jennifer's
are you working
going to
for
school.
somebody else at this point? Or okay,
I started my career with Farm Bureau and with Stephenville. And I come back to our double wide trailer house that afternoon. And that's what I've still got probably 4 horses to ride that night because we're trying to sell horses to make it men's meat, the whole 9 yards. And I walk in, the first thing I see is this guy's got a cup and he pours sand on my living room carpet. I'm thinking, what is going on? And he's a Kirby vacuum cleaner salesman. Nice kid, really nice kid. He shows us all this stuff and gets done, and he wants $1,500 for this vacuum cleaner. And I'm just laughing. I go, dude, this isn't going to happen. Not going to be the day. So he's pretty good about it. So he's like, I understand, but I got to wait on my manager because they drop them off at this time. So anyway, this manager comes in, and he starts in on this deal, the big time closer, and he's like, well, he finally looked at me and said, you don't love your wife enough to buy her this vacuum cleaner? And that set me off. I was like, okay. I said, hang on just a minute. So I went over and grabbed my briefcase and brought it back. I said, okay. I get a life app out and I start filling it out. I said, what's your full name? He goes, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm going to sell you some life insurance because I know you love your family enough to buy some life insurance. You've never seen someone leave so quick in the world.
Oh, that's great.
But that's what people think about when they think of insurance or lawyers, whatever, car salesman. And that's why I was like, man, we just want to stake them completely away.
Even just the word salesman. I think anybody hears salesman, then they associate it with that a little bit. But I just so disagree with that. I think we're all selling. We're all highlighting the qualities that are desirable in ourselves, in our businesses. I mean, and no, not any one person, not any one business has 100% great qualities. That's the art of it. You kind of highlight the qualities, the values, and you try to offer it to the people. See, now today, you may experience this too. Hundreds of emails a day from a salesperson or a sales software coming to me, hey, you need this. Hey, I'm just try to block them, try to delete them, but there's another 100 the next day. I mean, it's like you can't get out of it. But I still appreciate that a little bit. I know there's a business behind there. There's a person, there's a real human somewhere that is just trying to get ahead. And yeah, it's annoying, but I've done the same thing. I mean, I know what it's like. I mean, I'm asking people for their business because I believe what I have is valuable. If you're not willing to ask them for their business, you don't believe in whatever it is you're doing.
That's true. And I think, though, with that, when you perceive the value that you're going to give to your customer, and again, so it's not, I'm peddling something for commission.
Yeah.
And that's the salesman part that we all run from, that we don't want to be associated with, is I call it commission breath. And you see those guys, they don't really care about the product necessarily. They want to make a commission check and they're on to the next one.
Yeah.
And that's the difference within that. But,
and I still empathize with them because they're just trying to make a living too. I mean, they're just trying to make a living. They don't know a better way yet.
There's a bigger world out there than they're seeing right now. But yeah,
that's just the training they've had, and it's turned out probably be super valuable to them at some point. I mean, I know a lot of guys that have made big careers, and they started out just door to door knocking, selling windows, shingles, encyclopedias, Cutco knives, any of this stuff. There's some value in the learning how to be told no, like millions of times, and going on and just keep going. Oh my gosh, I got my first yes. It was after 500 no's.
Well, statistics still to this day say that the close will happen usually 80% of the time after the 5th close. And, and you tell a new salesperson that, especially, they're like, oh my gosh, I got to take no that many times. Right. It's like, no, really you don't, because if you present it properly, you're taking care of some of that as we're presenting the information, because you're giving information.
Yeah.
But that's true. It's just, you got to be a little bit thick-skinned and persistent.
Well, and you can't pay somebody if you're not getting income. I mean, you got to sell some policies to make the money flow. Yeah. But focusing on the money, this is what I'm hearing loud and clear from you. Focusing on the money is not the thing that is successful. Now, okay, so you started working for Farm Bureau. When did you decide to have your own agency?
Well, actually, after that, I worked for nearly 20 years with Farmers Insurance Group. I was a district manager for them in the Wichita Falls area. That's where we moved back from. That's what they found me. That's what I was like, no way I work for those guys. But anyway, it turned out they had a great contract. We started out, we had 14 agents in the Wichita Falls area. Before we left, we ended up 45, Wichita Falls and Abilene both. And it was a great ride. But I was self-employed, but I was still very close to corporate.
Yeah.
And corporations change, nothing against the company itself, but they do evolve and they change, and we do as well. We get older and all that. And it got to a point of really health-wise, stress-wise dealing with the corporate, because I'm one of those why guys. If I know why something, I can deal with it. The not knowing the why and having to deal or help your agents or whatever.
It's kind of like you
tough.
said, horse training.
That's it.
If the horse knows why, he'll do it.
That's it.
You say, no, you just got to do it. Well, then you don't get as willing of a participant.
And so we had a little leadership changes, and that kind of got to be a little bit that way. And so we got to looking around, and I didn't think I ever would. And again, I really think, a lot of doors were open. I started looking at all sorts of different, independent agencies, talking to them. Insurance, what I knew. So I was like, hey, how can we move back home? But I never would have dreamed that Jim and Ruth would have sold.
Right.
That's what so Gustine I thought was probably off limits. We're going to ask them anyway. So again, back to a good salesman, right?
Yeah.
I knew the Aaron agency in Eastland because we also bought it because I was a county extension agent right out of college in Eastland County.
Yeah.
So I knew a lot of the people there, kind of had the connections of what was still going on there. So we were able to buy that. And then shortly thereafter, Jim, that's what it took us. If anybody knows Jim Abbey, he's going to get a kick out of this. It only took us a year of courting. And I say courting because it wasn't negotiating. It was just getting to know each other.
Yeah.
And because the legacy of the Gustine Insurance Agency was so important to him to leave and what he felt like do his due diligence. Was so important. He respected that so much. It took a year for us to really get to know each other. It's been a blessing for me because I've got a really great friend now in Jim and a mentor.
Yeah.
That a lot of people transaction wise don't do that with businesses. It's all about money and that's, they move on. And that wasn't the case with Jim and Ruth at all. So again, who would have thought? Everybody was like, no, there's no way you're going to, they're not going to sell. And but we did. We met for about a year working all that out. And it was so funny because it was always 90 miles away from here because he was so afraid if anybody ever saw us together,
sure.
they would connect the dots.
Right.
And that wouldn't be good, because he wasn't sure. And,
right.
So that's what we had that opportunity to come back. And since then we've picked up a few more. And one same time, really, again, I think I call it a God wink, was the Germania agency was Willie Marwitz's that he started. Well, Willie was my wife's grandmother's brother.
Yeah.
Well, he had passed it on to Pam, and then Pam Pope had it for many years, and she was ready to retire, but we didn't know that either.
Yeah.
And all of that was bam, 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 or just like perfect timing.
Yeah.
And so we kept that in the family for them. That's what as well, and then put it all together. So.
And that's where the LBK.
LBK is our boys. That's Lanham, Brady, and Cade. So again, family.
See, this is how
something to
wacko
us.
it is. Like, I love that. I'm glad to know that. But I see LBK and I'm thinking Lubbock.
Everybody does. And I didn't even think about it when we did it, because I'm just thinking I want this to be a family, business.
Yeah.
And that's the legacy, and so we're going to go with LBK. And I never. But I've had so many people go, now, where's your location in Lubbock? And I'm like, we don't have a location in Lubbock.
But that's a great. It still can be leveraged as a kind of a cool conversation piece. Mm-hmm. Like, no, we're not from Lubbock. That's actually my boys' names. And
that's it.
I never thought about it like that. But
and all three of them were Texas towns. There was Lanham, Texas, Brady, Texas, and Cade's name really is Tyler Cade because we had to still stay with the Texas town.
Yeah, there you go. Wow, that's great. How do you just buy so many agencies all at once?
Well, it's, of course, I wouldn't recommend it to someone starting in the insurance business necessarily. But, we had 30 years prior of experience in running agencies and a lot of different agencies. And I think that helped a lot. I did some consulting work with a consulting, with a aggregation company, basically is with our networking. And what that means is they have appointments with carriers that they provide to agents getting in the business and all that. So I kind of got to see the backside of that curtain as well, which really helped in formalizing and putting it all together. I tell everybody we're in competition a lot of times with some of these big corporates. I mean, you've got some really big players in our space that are buying up a lot of agencies. The difference in us is that it's still mom and pop. We're a small business, family owned. It's going to be that way.
Did you keep the employees in those offices?
We did. We did our best.
How'd you do
everywhere.
that? Because you got to believe those are all different cultures, every one of those.
They are. And that's but we've been so blessed in that too, is that, in Comanche office, we've got, Dana Middleton started there when she was 16 years old. She's got me as many years in the business nearly as I have.
Yeah.
She's our director of agency operations. That's what Janice Swearingen has been there 25 years, I think, or so, and that's been that right there held that office. Well, over in Eastland, we've got a lady that's, Virginia. She had been there for 8 or 10 years before we started. The lady that had actually run the office forever still works for us part-time. But that was really what we wanted. We wanted to keep everything as much the same as we could. We didn't want to rip down Goodson name, and people say, well, you're using that. Well, no, I respect that.
Yeah.
I respect Aaron's name. We're going to leave that on that side over there. That was built before us. We're carrying on their legacy, but we didn't create this legacy. And we respect that.
That's cool. That's a really good way to think about it.
And that was a lot of heavy lifting to get to those agencies at that point.
Sure. I mean, I think just kind of molding all that into a thing that is now led by you, with that, with total respect to the other things, but now it's being led by you and your family and that vision. Man, that's how you build legacy. Really, you take what's handed to you and keep building on it and keep going. I mean, I think of it as momentum.
Well, my wife, she's a CPA by trade and really good in the computer world. So two things I am not good at all.
Yeah, right. Well, so that makes a good team.
It's a great compliment.
That's right.
So she handles IT and all the accounting, and that's what, of course, then I always tell her that she's the owner and CFO. She has all the money. So if you don't think she's in control, she won't write your check. Yeah. She'll be in control. So for me, I say I'm president of sales.
Right. There you go. I think about insurance as a great career that can generate recurring revenue. Is that right?
It is. Residual income.
Yes, residual income. That's the word.
That's right. And what I tell our
staff. Did that happen the first day?
No, it's a process of building. It's like a snowball. You think about it, you pack a snowball and start rolling it, it gets bigger and bigger. And that's really, if we do it right, that's the way it's supposed to be. You're always going to have some attrition. You're going to have a staff person that, her son got in the insurance business, with a different carrier or something. You're just going to have those things that happen. But if we treat people and continue to earn our dollars, is what I tell the staff all the time. Because, it's residual income, but you got to earn it.
Yeah, right.
And you don't earn it by forgetting them and just send them a bill in the mail. And that's a big difference. It's amazing in the service industry, really how the glass is either half full or half empty. And right now I say it's half, full from the standpoint that nobody's working really hard. I mean, it's hard. This is a hard market. We've never seen anything like this in the insurance market. And we got guys hiding from their customers because their customers are calling us. They're like, I can't even get my guy on the phone, Yeah. And I was like, we got to answer that call and tell them, yeah, it's going up, but this is what's going on in the industry. We don't control that part.
Absolutely. There is no such thing as mailbox money.
No.
Like, wake up, everybody. No. You're never going to get that. You can build a residual income. You can make great investments. You can build a business. But it's not mailbox money.
No.
Scott put it so perfectly. You still have to earn your money. Like, I don't know who ever, I guess I thought that was possible at one time. I thought these really rich people, they just wake up every day and the money's always there and they can never spend it all up. That's a lie. It's not true.
Oh, major lie. And that's when I got brought in the insurance industry. There was so many people that tell you, work 5-6 years and got it made. That's such a lie. If you own a business, any kind, form or fashion, you're never going to get to the point of putting on cruise control.
That's right.
It's just not going to happen, guys. You can have the best staff in the world. You're still going to have to be engaged.
That's right. And you said it earlier. Everybody changes. The world changes. The family dynamics change. So if you think, oh, I got everybody in their perfect spot on the bus. They all love their spot. Let's hit cruise control. They're not going to continue to love that spot. They're going to have a hardship in their life. And so it's just like, I think of leadership, or I think this is a place where you can build these businesses when you can start understanding that your role never goes away. Like you always have to be looking to help people find their greatness. And that's really kind of what the cowboy perspective is you're great. I'm great. Anybody listening, you're great. Like maybe nobody's telling you that. Maybe you don't understand it, but you are. Own that. Now go figure out how to leverage it. And within your teams, there's people that are great at this thing, great at that thing. They're all super. The janitor is a super valuable, important cog in the wheel.
That's it. Well, and all that said too, it's the old saying that either you're growing or you're dying.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got to continue to better ourselves and make those decisions too to be better in whatever we're doing this life.
Yeah.
When
do you get done doing that?
When they throw that dirt in your face.
Yeah, I mean, like people talk about retirement. This is a piece of my. I don't even understand the concept.
No.
I mean, honestly, I've never been around anybody that retired.
No.
I don't know what do you mean retired?
Well,
they go play golf. Well, yeah. I mean, maybe. Yeah, I just don't get it.
I'm afraid my wife will tell you there's no way that they probably, I couldn't last a week. I can't go on vacation for a week, It's just, there's no way. So no, I'll continue to be engaged and do that. But I think you look around and you see folks that need maybe that talk, is that, hey guys, find a different way to engage yourself in something.
Yeah.
Because
or even
life gets miserable.
If you think about a business, a team, and the people on the team that aren't happy to be there, but they're too scared to do something different, sometimes the greatest gift you could give them is let them go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sorry, you're too scared to do it on your own. I'm going to help you. You ain't working here no more. I mean, you can keep coming to work, but we're not sending you any money.
Well, if you was in the Brandon pen and you wouldn't go down that rope and take a hold, you was going to get turned loose pretty quick, wouldn't
you? That's right. You bet. I mean, if you ain't giving it 100% and getting it right most of the time, but if you're giving it 100%, you can mess up. You can be in the wrong spot. Like, you got to figure these things out. But now, if you've been told once, this is the spot. You better get that right. You better get that right. I was telling my daughter the other day, girl, I've told you this more than once. And once is all you get. You should, you're smart enough. I know. You understand what I'm telling you. You don't need to be told again,
That's back to that choices and consequences.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's a cowboy perspective. I mean, you got told once.
Mm-hmm.
Then they quit telling you. Then they quit inviting you. Then you're gone.
You're done.
Either get it on the one time or it's over.
And most of those guys, those old cowboys, especially I used to work on the ranch with, is they wanted you to read their mind.
Yeah.
And you were supposed to read their mind.
You better be able to figure
it out quick.
You better figure out what a glance to the left means.
That's right.
It's impossible to interpret, but if you're worried about it, and if you want to please them, and if you want to be on the crew, you start getting a pretty good guess. And it's paying attention. It's paying attention the whole time, because there's no chance of getting even close to what that glance meant if you hadn't been watching every single thing. And they'll train you to do that. I was lucky. I had my dad and my uncles and other cowboys trained me to pay attention, because, and not explicitly, it's like, how many of these cows are dry? Right when you pull in the pen. What do you mean? You mean you don't know? There's 3 of them. Like really quick, I'm like, whoever said pay attention to the dry cows? Nobody. They just, now then next time we gather, you better be looking, paying attention. Which cow does that calf with the floppy ear go on? What? There's a floppy-eared calf? You know, it's like these things pretty quick. There's so much going on here besides just trailing the cattle.
You bet.
And that's true in the insurance business. That's true in the bacon business. That's true in the podcasting business. There's so much going on here.
Well, I learned a lot of that from my dad. I'd go with him as scout. And so it got to a point to where I had a clipboard up there, and I was pretty young still. And I'm up there drawing plays and, watching and all that. Well, he's down there jacking with the other coaches, so they can't.
Yeah, right. It's like, I'm going to see Scott will get us the advantage because he can take care of this part. Yeah.
So you learned, to observe and to look for the details. And then we'd be in a restaurant sometimes and you'd say, okay, look around. What do you see? And it's surprising how you can, and this is judgmental, so I guess it's not right probably, but we could look around and say, okay, that guy's, he's probably a welder. That guy's this, and just play that game. But that also taught me to be, again, like you said, to read people, to read the situations of what's going on. And of course, when you're a kid, you don't have a clue what that really means. But you look back on it, it's like, oh wow, there was a method to his madness.
That's why parenting has to be so appreciated, and it can't be until you're a little older and you can understand. Yeah. But parents are the only ones that won't quit. My mom and dad had to consider quitting so many times. Like, geez, this kid's never going to get it. I mean, how hard can it be to pick up on this? But I see it myself now. Like, I won't quit. I love them too much. There's too much at stake for me to just, geez, I'm so tired of telling them, pick your clothes up. That's what you sign up for when you're a parent. You can't quit. You got to keep.
It is. And in today's society, especially with this victimology kind of thought process, everybody's a victim. You want our kids to be stout enough and strong enough that it's still choice and consequences, and we're gonna own up both sides of that.
Absolutely. Well, we've been talking for an hour and 15 minutes. It goes by quick. We did have one little video thing, so that might have took 30 seconds out or something. I'm curious because I could tell you real fast. What was your favorite horse?
Favorite horse? I'd have the favorite probably wasn't the best, but my favorite probably would have to be a horse I call Maynard. He was an old Turtle Dancer bred horse.
Yeah.
That's what, and Skeet Watley, that's what I was looking for, a horse, kind of a step-up horse. And he said, a man by the name of Robert Reagan out at Big Springs has got a horse you might want to look at. So I call him, set the deal up. Dad goes with me. We go try him. And I ran 10 calves that morning on this horse, never missed one. And said, well, of course, back this day, it's like, I think $3,000. Right. Like, that's a lot of money. Yeah. And Danny Armstrong get a kick out of this if he listens, is that, he was my banker at the time. So I damn sure didn't have $3,000.
Yeah, right.
And Jerry Vines hated him to loan money on horses. I mean, absolutely. Sure. He had to do it and get in trouble, basically. That's why it was going to work. And so I'd already talked to Danny before I went out there, and he's like, oh, yeah, I guess we could, just make sure he's good.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, we go to eat lunch, and I was like, man, that's a lot of money. We go eat lunch, and Dad's like, son, he said, you got to buy that horse. He said, you hadn't missed one yet, and you roped way better on him than everything I've ever seen. So we drive back up there, and we buy him, and that's what he was. He's just solid. He was so solid. He could even have to wear a tie down on this horse, and he was just that solid. Yeah. And I'll never forget, boy's dad came to me one night, and he said, your horse, he said, he's not very fast, but he doesn't draw anything he can't catch.
Yeah, that's right.
That was Maynard.
Yeah. Oh, it's just a great name, Maynard. Anybody that's just going to be so relevant to so many of the listeners. Maybe your favorite wasn't the best. Mm-hmm. I went and gathered cattle on a place with Billy Albin. Buster Welch's place, actually, and there's a horse they called Enchilada. He wasn't a world champion cutting horse or any other thing, but Billy said, that's the best horse here. That's my favorite horse. Old Enchilada. He was just the favorite.
You bet.
So everybody, there you go. That's a great conversation. I've learned stuff about Scott that I wouldn't have known. Now I'm happy to know, and it's helped me. So I hope the conversation's helped you. And if you loved it, tell somebody. If you didn't, tell me. I mean, well, I'll try to do better. But I just don't know how you wouldn't love it if you're interested in any of these things, the insurance business, raising kids, rodeo. Well, then you're going to align and have great insight from what we've talked about. Anything you wanted to say before we close it up? Or
I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate what you're doing and everything you're doing in Comanche County as well.
Oh yeah, we need to shout out old Chance Conrado.
Yeah,
in case he listens. There's about a 0.002% chance he's ever going to hear this.
Well, Chance talks better than he listens.
Yeah, that's right. But he's back to training horses. I mean, I don't know him well. I'd almost bet you money he wouldn't know me if I walked up and said hi, Chance, and I've interviewed him. Just he's busy. He's doing lots of stuff. But if he does listen, Chance, high five, because Scott heard your show, our interview, and now we're sharing his story and getting to have this conversation. So that's how it works. Thanks, everybody. Have a great one. Go be great.